Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to, a massive spoiler. I'm very sorry about that if you caught the chat there. Yes, oh dear, well, okay, I don't know how that got left in the edits. That's very remiss of me. Anyway, so this is iGreen Dino in the new tier 8 French heavy tank, the AMX 65T, and if I had to guess, he doesn't have it fully upgraded yet. Now, he does certainly have the top turret. He's using the 100mm SA32, I believe it is, gun that you get on the 5100, which has pretty good penetration. In fact, it's very good penetration for its tier for a heavy tank. And the things that I think he's missing, well, he might have chosen not to use the 120mm gun for reasons I'll get to, but I can't imagine he has the top engine. You might be lacking the upgraded tracks as well. It's a little hard to tell just watching a replay, but anyway. So this is kind of an odd beast looking at it on the tanks.gg stats site and just seeing what the armor's like, seeing what the various choices are like. And like some of the other lower tier French heavies, it does seem to have some viable choices, because a lot of tanks, you know, there's one configuration. But with this one, you do have some different potential variations that would still be viable. Now, first off, the stock turret is in fact the AMX M449 turret, albeit with an even weaker commander's cupola for some reason. But that comes with some major downsides. It's possibly the best armoured turret. This upgraded turret isn't quite as good armor-wise, but although the stock turret has got better gun depression, it gets 2 extra degrees, it also has a pretty horrible view range, and you suffer for both having fewer hit points and also, crucially, less DPM. So you can choose to use the stock turret and have the extra armor and the extra gun depression, but you're going to pay a penalty for that. Now with this top turret, you only get 8 degrees of gun depression, although that's still pretty reasonable. You've also then got the choice of mounting the top 120mm gun, and this is where the choices get maybe a little bit more interesting, but maybe not that much so. So the 120mm gun hits for 400 average damage per shot, which is a nice upgrade on this 300 average damage per shot. But that does come again at the expense of DPM and also penetration. So this 100mm has 232, and I think the DPM is in the 1800-ish range, if I'm remembering correctly. It might even be 1900-ish. It gets confusing because tanks.gg, you can either look by, you know, the 100% crew stats numbers, or you can look at the base stats, and sometimes they flick between both and then I forget which is which. So it's one of those two. It's okay. And then if you put on the 120mm, it goes down to like 1700, and I think that is actually the base DPM. So yeah, that at that point is not that good at all. You also don't have as much penetration. You've only got 218 penetration, which isn't much above the 90mm that you will possibly have been using at the tier before. So on the face of it, despite the extra punch and despite the fact that it does have a better aim time, the 120mm seems not actually that attractive a choice. If it were me playing this thing, which I might do if I, you know, can find the will, find the urge to play some Will of Titanfall. If it were me playing it, I would probably stick with the 100mm gun for that reliable penetration, because the extra punch is certainly going to be nice on the 120mm, and the extra handling will be, or the better handling will be nice, but you're going to be reaching for your premium ammo a lot more versus tier 10s, whereas with 232 base pen, or average pen rather, that's not really going to be so much an issue. So if they could just kill this VK, that would be quite nice. The Carnarvon's only just come through by the skin of their teeth, but at this point the team looks like they are starting to really overcome the enemy team. They're going to lose that WZ in the south, but that is the real last remaining pocket of enemy resistance, aside from a Panther II by the Cap, who is about to die. Now he's taken a bit of damage and bounced a bit of damage so far, but yeah, I mean this hasn't been a spectacularly like high energy game with lots of whizzing around and bouncing things and juking and jiving, because it doesn't really seem to be that kind of a tank. I do highly suspect, I might have said this already, he doesn't have the top engine. I think the power to weight will get better when you have the top engine, but it's just not that kind of a tank. It seems almost, looking at the stats and particularly looking at the armor layout, a bit like the preceding AMX M445, in that you're going to want to avoid taking the hits if at all possible. And this almost kind of makes the 120mm perhaps a valid choice. You know, the main thing in my eyes that holds the 120mm back is the lack of penetration rather than the lower DPM, because you're not necessarily going to want to be sitting out in the open trading shots with people, because your armor is not going to stand up in that kind of fight. And there we go, that's actually one with the stock turret. So, you know, that then might make that 120mm a viable choice. But, as I say, that lack of penetration does seem to be, that just seems to tip over in my eyes to making this a much more attractive gun. So, he's actually managed to rack up over 4,000 damage. He's also bounced some shells, but they were shells at more medium range. And I think he bounced a couple of T92 shells as well, which are, you know, a bit lower penetration. But this is a top tier game. You know, bearing in mind this can see tier 10s. That armor is not going to stand up in tier 10 games at all. It wouldn't necessarily even matter if you were using the AMX M449 turret in that case, because you know, you've got a much squashier hull than that machine, and you have the same cupola weak spot, which I think people mostly know about at this point. The cupolas on this aren't too bad. They're actually stronger than the stock turret, but the turret face itself is weaker. So that was an ace tanker along with a top gun. He just sneaked in that final kill there, and despite the somewhat long aim time, you know, the accuracy does pay off in this tank. And a lot of the French tanks at the lower tiers are like that as well. You know, the actual dispersion stat is good, but it's the aim time and it's the bloom. It's getting down to that smallest reticle size that can be the issue. He did shoot a lot more APCR than he needed to. I highly suspect that was by accident, because he switched to APCR for the VK and subsequently forgot to change back, and so doesn't have a lot of credits at the end of this battle, but he did just about pull a profit and was able to basically come out quite nicely on the top of the team. But it was through letting other people take the hits for the most part. It was through letting other people tank the damage. And it'll be interesting to see if the tier 9 and the tier 10 are like this. They do seem to have some better armor, but none of them have the like, even at the tier 10, I think the hull of the AMX 50B is much stronger than the tier 10's, the new tier 10's hull armor. But of course, then the 50B has that very squashy turret. So you'd rather have, I think, a strong turret than you know, a strong hull and a weak turret, because it's a lot easier to hide your hull than it is to shoot people whilst hiding your turret. That kind of thing isn't really possible. So yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this game, and if you did, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.